Welcome back, folks. Premier Madden Podcast. It's just me today, Finn, by myself. So if I get repetitive, or what I tend to do when I talk too much is I just forget the last sentence that I said. Bear with me. We'll try to make it short, concise, to the point, and answer some of the interesting topics and talk a little bit about some of the cool features that we haven't talked about yet for Madden 20 on the podcast. So the big thing today, SGO threw this in the chat. I won't say an hour ago. He said, topic of discussion, will RPOs in Madden 20 be looked at like option plays in previous games? Should people have to limit them, and that running them too much would be considered cheese? And this is referring mainly to sim leagues, obviously, in MUT and head-to-head. There's no such thing as too much. But let's talk a little bit about sim leagues and what people would consider cheese, sim, and where RPOs fit into the mix. So what he said is he proposed, what about 75%? Would it be okay for somebody to run 75% RPOs? Well, for me, when we're talking about a sim league, you're trying to mimic real football tendencies and real football strategy and real football gameplay. So there's obviously outliers that you can look at. Think Tim Tebow versus Chiefs back in the day, 52 runs to 2 passes in that game. That's an outlier. It's not really fair to point to that as sim football play to run consistently. Same thing when you see a team throwing 40 times a game and they run but 4 or 5 times a game. That's just not sim. As obviously there's going to be scenarios that you can point to, but really 70 to 30% in either way, run or pass, is kind of the norm. But SGO poses this question of this run pass option because on any given play, they're both. So since you could do one or the other on every play, or one of 3 things, you can throw the pass, hand the ball off, keep with the quarterback. Because it's so many options, and you can end up doing those plays and averaging out well within the 30-70 threshold, is it fair to run that 75% of the time? So some of the initial answers, Rob thinks that the RPOs are going to be trash. I disagree. When it's your newest feature, I say that, but real player motion was pretty bad last Madden. But when it's your newest gameplay feature, there's a lot of focus that goes into that and making that usable. Because nothing would be worse for Madden 20 than to implement RPOs into the game and they'd be absolutely useless. I felt Madden 19 read option plays were a little underrated. I didn't see too many folks using them, but I really felt like a well-timed RPO with even a decently speedy quarterback could really cause some damage, especially just with how overpowered some of the open field moves are, particularly the spin. You could really do some damage with an RPO, especially when people aren't prepared for it. So, I guess the next thought is sim. So, RPOs and sim football, right? Especially in the NFL. I think people get too wrapped up, and what you see a lot with the folks that do the film studies is they're like, oh, that's an RPO, when they're just design runs. One of the particular examples you should look at is go look at, I want to say Barry and Fostate, but that's because that's his Reddit username, Brett Coleman. He did a video on the Ravens rushing offense, and a lot of the times, you would think Lamar Jackson, number 1 rushing offense, that they were just running read option all the time. That's what they did at Louisville, right? But he points out that a good chunk, if not more than half of those runs and plays are not option plays, but instead design plays. It's, they set them up to look like run pass options or read option plays, or option quarterback runs and kind of deal, but they're set up to look like that, but they're designed to have. The tight end isn't an option guy. He's a legit pull blocker in this scenario, or whatever the case. You have to watch the video to really understand what I'm saying, but the whole point is part of the mystery of the run-pass option is mixing in normal play actions and just normal runs, keeping them on their toes. That's where the run-pass option fits into a sim offense, in my opinion, is not coming out and going, oh, well, I ran this many times and I threw this many times, so technically it should work out. No, I think you need to be mixing it in. Now, 75% of your plays being run-pass options, I think is unsim. I think that's because, my mind could be changed depending on how many plays in a given playbook have the run pass options. Does that make sense? If we're playing with Carolina's playbook and there's just tons and tons of run pass option plays, if it's a good chunk of the playbook, then I think that would be a fair assessment to say, okay, that's fine. But if we're talking about repeating the same 3 to 4 run pass options and just audible or hot rodding the receiving routes, then I think at that point I'm not okay with it being used 75% of your play calls. You wouldn't tell somebody that 75% cover 3 is really sim, and just sitting in that force cover 3 the whole time wouldn't be sim. So I think it goes the other way. I think it has to be balanced and mixed in extremely well with play action plays out of the shotgun, with normal runs out of the shotgun, with normal design quarterback keepers out of the shotgun. Now begs the question of, do we allow custom playbooks on offense in a sim league here? Because now you can load your playbook up with all the various run pass options in the game because they're different. The Ravens ones are going to be a lot different than the Eagles ones versus the Carolina ones versus Seattle ones. So loading your playbook up with them and then just using that as an excuse, I don't think that's fair. I almost would like to see you folks be a little bit more limited within their offensive playbooks. I think a big reason for cheese in a lot of these leagues is that we allow these offensive playbooks that are just absolutely stacked and loaded with every route combination. I think with something that I want to talk a little bit about later, I think it would be best to limit folks to the design playbooks in the game. You don't have to pick the one that's for your team, but you have to pick one of the 32 design playbooks versus just combining the best out of 5 playbooks and then having every best play in the book. I think that's where a lot of the cheese comes in and can help negate some of the issues people have with play calling. JT himself seems to be for it as long as we're not in a situation where there's a lot of glitches and exploits. So, yeah, I think if people think back to when the Wildcat was introduced after the Dolphins made it pretty popular with Ronnie Brown and they introduced the Wildcat into the game, and it was just ridiculously overpowered. Yeah, I think there's definitely potential for the run pass option to be extremely overpowered. But it looks like there's a good chunk of them from off the initial reports. I mean, over 200 run pass options in the game. That sounds good to me. They're not going to all be in the same playbook. So imagine, you know what I'm saying? Somebody should be able to just have all 200 run pass options in their playbook and just run that all the time. I feel like, I just don't feel like that's sim football. Mix it in. If I had to give it a percentage, it's tough because there are runs and passes. It's really tough. I think having a league that has kind of how Premier Madden does it, they have a sim score and they have something that's reviewable. You can, if you feel personally that it was egregious, you can give your opponent a low sim score and talk about it there with the CMs afterwards. So there's something for that. I anticipate my Xbox League probably heavily regulating the use of that. That's just because they're not a big fan of mobile quarterbacks anyways. So we're not really going to be able to get away with 10 to 15 runs by a quarterback, which you can do. But it is important for folks, and I think as we talked last episode about linebackers and the whole superstar abilities where only the star linebackers are going to have the ability to make the interceptions that we're used to within the user linebacker realm. I think this game is going to be so much harder defensively for folks. You're really going to start getting shredded by just every route in the book because cover 3 is now so unreliable. And I know I haven't touched the game yet, and I think EA Play, which is coming up in a couple of days, will tell us a little bit more about the cover 3 dominance, as well as the cover 2 dominance. And I know people tend to shy away from cover 2, but what people didn't realize is you could really dominate and force just check down after check down after check down in cover 2 by just taking your middle linebacker and putting him in a deep blue and then using underneath with one of the other yellow zones. If you have even a decent pass rush, that is one of the most overpowered defenses in the game in terms of a sim community without doing too much. Nothing's open in the middle, which you would think it would be open in cover 2. Nothing's really open on the corners because cornerbacks jump every single corner route, even though they're in, cloud flats. You really have to wait until crossing routes, like two slants or something, really open up late, be able to move the pocket with your quarterback on crossing routes, or just have a true high-low and hope for the best in terms of your offensive line, because that linebacker is going to get back deep. But now with all the things that are going on that I'm going to talk about here in a second, as well as that linebacker superstar ability. If you don't have a stud back there at middle linebacker, you can't just throw him in the middle blue. He's still going to get burned and not be able to make big plays. Or the yellow zones aren't going to be as helpful in the earlier parts of the downs in terms of being able to pick off seam routes. You're really going to be able to get seam routes over those linebackers early and often, and that's just going to be a problem all in there. So I'm really concerned about this huge offensive feature coming in, like RPOs. Even the jet sweeps as well. That isn't just an RPO, but the jet sweeps that are coming in is going to be really tough to adjust to, while also adjusting to the normal metas that aren't just going to be as easy anymore. You can't just sit in cover 3, blitzes the whole time, or just sit in cover 3. It's just not going to work. So interested to see how that works out. So what I do want to talk about is one of the big things that came out recently. I think it was the I don't know if this was like the May 23rd stream, or if it was just, I don't know when it came out, maybe even early June, but the hot routes. So, well, the hot routes, that's what I decided to call it, geez. So one of the big things that I've always wanted was an advantage for elite quarterbacks pre-snap. I think with in sim leagues, the ability to just let your aging veteran quarterback go at 31, 32, I wouldn't even say 30, maybe 34, 35, and just not really lose much of a step on offense with a young rookie that you pick up is kind of insane to me. I think that, folks have mentioned the idea of having like a mentor for players like, I know I'm jumping around a bit, but like, you remember when your older veterans would just have a ton of XP, but everything costs so damn much for them to upgrade. So it didn't really make sense to have all this XP on a player that you couldn't even really upgrade much. But people were like, well, why can't they have a mentor trait? And then maybe that XP can apply to their position group. So I always thought that was a good idea. But really, in essence, what I wanted was for the ability for one player to have such an impact to other players on his team, and especially at the quarterback position. You wanted to feel like you had a veteran quarterback versus having all of the same features available to you with some 73, 74-year-old rookie quarterback that you traded the farm for and picked him up in the first round because he has 89 speed, and then you cheese your way to him being 90 overall by the second season. So when I heard this news, I was ecstatic. It was just finally. I had always thought it would come in the form, or I was always hoped it would come in the form of at pre-snap, quarterback would be limited based on his awareness or whatever the case may be, or traits. He couldn't call hot routes, or he couldn't call audibles. He was limited compared to what the other quarterbacks had. But what they did is kind of like that, but instead of taking things away from the existing quarterbacks, they just gave more features there to the elite quarterbacks and elite receivers. So now I'll go into detail, the hot routes. So for elite wide receivers, guys like Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., I don't know what trait it is specifically, like what superstar trait, if one, that it's applied to, or if it's just maybe an overall threshold or whatever. But if a wide receiver is determined elite by whatever standard, they are given 4 extra hot routes. I guess that was the word, hot routes. So the ones that were in the example were post, corner route, stop and go, like a hitch and go, and crossing. But I think in the article it mentioned that those can be mapped and changed. So basically what happens is you have this elite receiver, Antonio Brown, and now just him, regardless of my quarterback, we can hot route him to a post, whereas somebody else on the team I can't hot route to a post, which is fantastic, which means you'll see guys moving those players around more, showing the versatility, showing the true eliteness, knowing that you see that guy get hot routed, and it could be the post that's going to exploit your cover 2. And people are going to complain a little bit about this. They're going to say, oh, no, posts are OP. Like, you shouldn't be able to hot route posts. Like, here's the thing, dude. It's football. And in football, you can hot route a post. So this is not a feature that's game-breaking unsim. It is a very, very sim feature. A smarter player would be able to take more at the line of scrimmage. So I can communicate a post or corner to him. So it's on the developers to make sure that doesn't break the game. It's not about not allowing it. That's what it seemed to be in the past, is they wouldn't allow hot routing posts because it just straight up breaks the game. No. So now you can hot route a post or a corner or a stop and go, which is an interesting route. I wonder if it'll be just like the double move routes that we see, or if it'll be like a new route within the game. And what it's limited to, maybe there's some extra routes that are by default for the slot guys in terms of what they can be hot routed to. So interested to see how that goes. Maybe the post out of the slot is more of a skinny post versus a true post. So we'll see how it works. I'd like to see an ability to kind of flatten it out, especially if you feel like the cover two guys are going to drop real deep, like flatten that post out, or maybe flatten it out right in front of the middle cover three safety. Just really get that nice and flat. Maybe that's an option. So we'll see there. So yeah, so that's the new thing for the receivers. Now, if you have, I think it was the elite pocket passing trait, superstar trait for a quarterback. So Brady, Rodgers, I'm like blanking, Drew Brees, maybe Big Ben, Phillip Rivers, like these guys, maybe guys like Andrew Luck, maybe it extends to guys like Matt Stafford. Now you can, those 4 new hot route slots apply to every receiver on the team. And that's awesome. Every single receiver on the team now can be hot routed to any of those 4 routes. You now have such a massive advantage in terms of hot routing and pre-play and just catching guys in bad coverages. Is it going to be a little exploitable? Yes, but it is an absolute step in the right direction. I am so excited for this. Just because what you find in Madden, especially the franchise leagues, is just older players just thrown to the dirt the moment that they're old or that they have to get paid a little bit. And people won't pick them up, or they'll go to bad teams, or guys will just send that player to a bad team because he's a high overall and then take their picks and start with a young guy. And it's like they didn't even miss a beat. They're just back to the top. Like, no, like having a noticeable offensive impact based on having a different quarterback is huge. I mean, even some of Tom Brady's traits are help the offensive line block better. Like, that's just having a better quarterback just makes the team better. Having better players just makes your team better. So now seeing this reflected in the game via these traits is just it's just great. It's just great. You're going to see way more folks with cap issues, especially what they talked about cap being kind of reworked, or the contracts being worked. We're going to see way more folks having to deal with cap issues because keeping their franchise quarterback is way more important. You can't just be like Vikings in our leagues who just lets the quarterbacks go and grabs Jalen Hurts and some other scrub quarterback and makes his way to 12-4 with 70 overall quarterbacks. It's not going to happen. And that's the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about is how this all affects, selecting your team. How do I go about selecting my team in Madden 20? What should I focus on? What should you focus on within your franchise? Because it's probably coming up here soon. Normally, leagues pick around the times that ratings get released. Maybe after first cuts. Who knows? But what would you pick? And here's my focus. Some of my priorities are going to be. One is going to be I want to find a 29 to 31-year-old quarterback that has that hot route trait. And if he doesn't have that elite pocket passing trait so he can have those hot routes, then maybe somebody a little bit more exciting, more scramble-based to kind of find the advantage in other areas of the game. Now, why did I say 2029 when the meta, or 29 to 32 when the meta of the NFL, sorry, just hit my mic here, when the meta of the NFL in real life is getting a rookie quarterback, getting him on a rookie deal, absolutely stacking your roster with talent while you're on that rookie quarterback deal, and then making it to the NFL. I mean, we've seen team after team do that. You saw Russell Wilson with the Legion of Boom and just the amount of talent they had on the defensive side of that football, as well as on the offensive side with Marshawn Lynch and the ability to run the ball. And then but it requires you to find talent amongst your draft depth because, anyways, you saw the Eagles do it with Carson Wentz, even though Nick Foles won on that Super Bowl, did it. The Rams have been doing it with Jared Goff. The Chiefs have been doing it with Patrick Mahomes. So the whole meta in the NFL is just get yourself a rookie guy. But why do I not want it? Well, one, I do want to have a little bit of change for me. I'm not a huge trading guy. In this league, I traded Patrick Mahomes for Andrew Luck, and I had a pretty good season. But I think for me, it's really important to get out there and have a good team early in the cycle and get that development for your players. And I think it's just having a quarterback out the gate that's going to have those superstar traits is a little bit more important to me than getting a young stud. Now, obviously, getting a team with Patrick Mahomes would be fantastic to have the Chiefs, especially. I wouldn't even say especially. Obviously that's a little bit up in the air in terms of with Tyreek Hill in those situations, but they did draft Mecole Hardman. They do have some talent still on that team. They got great defensive talent on that team. Russell Wilson is in that range that I'm looking for, so that's nice. But sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, but really, none of the young quarterbacks in the league I think are going to have those. The exciting guys this year, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, they're going to be good, but they're not going to have that elite pocket passing. That they're going to have that elite mobility. Patrick Mahomes is probably going to have that elite. He's probably going to be the guy to get if you really want to have a stud quarterback on a rookie deal. But then you're going to have to pay him real soon. And if I think also to consider is whenever you have these young guys, because outside of Kyler, there's no exciting young quarterbacks in the league. So everybody's going to be ready to be paid by season 3. So if you don't have the contract management down within this new game, you could really mess your team up for the whole cycle by overpaying a quarterback who may never progress to having that elite status. So do you really want to struggle for a little bit as you get used to the game with a quarterback that's still young and doesn't have all the elite traits? Overpay to keep that quarterback, and then he never gets that elite. So the entire cycle, you'll never have the ability to audible your entire team for different hot routes. And I get that that's not the biggest advantage in the entire world. We were literally talking about RPOs earlier, so not getting a mobile quarterback takes out a third of the RPO possibility plays because nobody's going to believe you're running running with the quarterback, or they'll just let you. And what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? Take Jared Goff for 170 yards a game? No, it's not happening. So my priority is get a quarterback that is already paid so I don't have to worry about that. Guys like Luck, guys like Stafford, guys like, I don't think Derek Carr will be in there. Russell Wilson, he's got paid. I don't know if he's got paid in real life, but he's going to be paid if he hasn't been already. You're even safe with guys like Aaron Rodgers. Now, Phillip Rivers, Big Ben, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, those are going to be for the guys that think that they can win right now in your leagues. And then you're going to have quick turnaround and find yourself a replacement as soon as possible because Drew Brees to Teddy Bridgewater, Tom Brady to who is even the backup to Tom Brady, right? Brian Hoyer. And it also depends how frivolous the superstar traits have been to the various quarterbacks. Guys like Jimmy Garoppolo could fly under the radar. It's interesting to see what Cam Newton ends up at, even though JT's got him pretty much on lock. But it'll be really interesting because if guys like Josh Allen or, once again, Kyler Murray, some of the other various quarterbacks that are kind of in the middle range, Derek Carr, if those guys end up having pretty solid traits, they could be definitely usable to an extent. But to have a true advantage day one, that's my importance. So I got I got the Colts on my radar. I've got the Packers on my radar. I got the Lions on my radar. I got the Seahawks on my radar. All teams. I even have the Rams on my radar, even though everybody should have the Rams on the radar. They're such a stacked team. Jared Goff had a real nice year. And then after that, I wouldn't be against going and getting a project guy. Your Bills, even though they're probably going to be taken with Josh Allen. the hot shot guys, the Ravens, the Cardinals, they're going to be gone before most of you guys get a chance to pick. So you got to be thinking a lot of things. So that's my first priority is the quarterbacks in that 28 to 32, 33-year-old range that are in the high 80s, low 90s, and have some really solid superstar traits, with priority being on the hot routed ones, or mobility if you run a run-pass offense. So next is Falcons, Matt Ryan. That's another good one that may end up peeking through. He does have an MVP on his record, so and that Falcons team is nasty. Next priority for me is on the defensive side of the football, at the linebacker level. Obviously, this is kind of dependent on what league you have. So my Xbox league, in the sub-linebacker position, we do not allow safeties and defensive backs to play there. So since elite linebackers are the only linebackers that can get the crazy catching interception animations, the priority is going to be there for that league for me. I really need to get a linebacker that I know I can trust, that can play over the middle, that can dominate and get those picks, because that's just one more advantage. Just one less thing I got to worry about when we're talking about the RPOs is knowing that I got 10 more yards of coverage in me in the middle of the field versus getting completely exposed by high-low combinations, having inexperienced linebackers biting on run-pass options, and just getting myself in all sorts of a mess. Now, in Premier Madden, we do allow defensive backs to play at the sub-linebacker position. We allow safeties to play there. So now it's a whole different thing there because those safeties can't get those animations. So where's the priority? Because this doesn't have to be on linebackers. So now we've got to get, what kind of teams have very talented, true hybrid guys? Because I would like to see a situation where people are putting, I don't know, Desmond Southward, or just pick a safety. Just pick a random, free agent safety with solid speed that lives in the low 70s, and you just stick him there and you just let him be the user or roam free. If they get absolutely dominated in the run, then there's a trade-off there. So if you could find true hybrid guys, your Deion Buchanans, your Harrison Smiths, guys that you could just throw up into the box, your Eric Berries, and can really cause a lot of issues, in run defense, then you're pretty much set in terms of your team selection. So I think with a league that allows your sub linebackers, it's less of a priority. So since this is the Premier Madden Podcast and not the Top Madden Podcast, which is the Xbox league, we'll focus on Premier Madden. So priority on the quarterbacks. Since the priority may not be at the linebacker position, I'm going to shift this down to the cornerback position. So it's been widely known that the most important positions in football are pass rusher, and then or in defense is pass rusher and then cornerback. Having a true man-to-man cornerback is something that teams will always draft high for. You look at Denzel Ward, you look at Jalen Ramsey, just the history of the NFL, having a true lockdown guy is just so crucial, and I think it's going to even be more crucial this year because of all these traits and these in the zone abilities. If you don't have a guy that you can match up with those Odells that are in the zone, or just truly, just any dominant receiver, because the NFL is so receiver heavy. I mean, take your top 5, right? My top 5: Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr. at 4. And at 5, it's tough. It's tough. So, some would say Michael Thomas, some would say Tyreek Hill. There's obviously questions on if he's going to be in the NFL. Some people might even go look at A.J. Green. I'm sure I'm missing somebody pretty glaring out there, but there's just, and then we could probably get to 10, and we'd still be talking about guys like Mike Evans. You know what I'm saying? Or Alshon Jeffrey. Just there's so many talented, or Jarvis Landry. There's so many talented receivers in the NFL that are going to have these zone abilities because none of the offensive linemen have the zone abilities. So that's where most of it's going to be. And if they're not there, the quarterbacks will have a huge influence on that. So having a guy that I go, all right, his quarterback's in the zone, this is his best receiver, I'm throwing Ramsey on him. Or this wide receiver's in the zone, and I'm going to put my best receiver on his second option, some of the Patriots like to do. So I'll take Jalen Ramsey from the Jags here, throw it on his second best wide receiver, and then I manually double team his in the zone guy. So he has to make a decision. Throw at Jalen Ramsey to his second best receiver, or throw at his in the zone wide receiver and force a throw into guaranteed double coverage where I can make a user play on the football. Or find somebody else, but at the end of the day, when you're in a situation where a guy's in the zone, getting them to throw to their third best receiver on the team is not bad. And if you feel confident in your double team abilities, you can even take your second best corner and put them on their third option, and then you're just going to have to do a little bit more work in terms of that double team. Maybe do a little hot route action before the play. Make sure safety's over top to help you. A corner's playing underneath him in man, and then you just kind of trail and follow and bait. So a lot of different strategies, and I think that's what I love about Madden 20 is I'm already thinking like that. In 19, I never thought about that. I'm never thinking, oh, crap, he's in the zone now, so Patrick Mahomes can throw 10 more yards than he could before, so I can't play games. Or Tom Brady's not going to miss a throw at all. Or Cam Newton is going to be able to break guaranteed the first tackle every single time when he's in the zone. Like, your whole game plan changes when that happens. Like, if JTA has the goal line and Cam Newton in the zone, like, you're just so SOL. Like, you have to either, you know what I'm saying? You can't just run zone cover 2 anymore and hope for the best. Like, he's breaking that linebacker, and there's nothing you can do about it versus getting a lucky hit stick or whatever. Like, if he's in the zone, it's a problem. And now it's going to force users mid-game to abandon a game plan that may have been working because they got a little bit too carefree. They let a guy get some, get in the groove, get in the zone, and now you're dealing with Julio Jones against your 73 overall corner that you've been sitting in cover 3 all day, and he's going to just completely, for lack of a better term, dick him down. It's going to be really bad for you if you don't address it, and I think that's going to be one of the big game-changing things from this cycle. It's going to be having to really, truly adjust on the defensive side of the football, and the winners of this game are going to be guys who can adjust and don't get caught up in the zone. When you get your guy in the zone on the offensive side, don't freak out and feel like you got to force feed him the ball. Like, just like gravity. I know this is the basketball, but think Stephen Curry for the Warriors. They put out an article the other day about how he was at Davidson, and this team they double-teamed Steph. They're like, in their mind, they were like, I would rather play Davidson 4v3 than let Steph Curry beat me. So Steph Curry realized that, like, after the first, 5 minutes, was like, yo, coach, they're double-teaming me, straight up. Not double-teaming me when I had the ball. They're double-teaming me off-ball the entire time that I'm on the offensive side. So Steph Curry literally stood in the corner the whole game, got 0 points, got 3 assists, 3 rebounds, and they won the game by 30. You can't just focus all your, you know what I'm saying? A team literally can't just focus 2 to 3 guys on your in-the-zone player and get away with it. If you let them get away with it, they will. You've got to make decisions. You got to force them to overcommit to the pass, to overcommit to that player, or maybe it's in the run, and they overcommit to the run, and you got one-on-ones for days. So building your team around that, getting as many talented guys on your team as you can. It's very limited, the folks that have. I think it's only going to be 50 at any given time are going to have these zone abilities. So if you can get 4 to 5 guys on your team with zone abilities, then you're in good shape. Regardless of age, just knowing in a given moment that a dude is damn near unstoppable is going to be extremely important. So building your team, cap situation as well. I think free agency changes a little bit now with the way, you're going to see less. You're going to see more role players hitting free agency. You're going to see less older talent hitting free agency. So I think being very busy within your trades and being very busy within your drafting. I don't think there's going to be situations where, like in Premier Madden, where Tre'Davious White hit free agency and somebody got to pay him double quarterback money. You know what I'm saying? That's just not going to be possible. And if you don't manage your free agency well for the future, you might be in trouble. If you splurge because you think you have money now and then you have to pay that quarterback we were talking about, even if you do get them up to the X factor ability, then you have to pay them and you don't have enough money for it, that's going to be huge for you. So, all right. Well, I think that was good. I think we covered one of the new features in Madden 20, how it's going to affect team selection across multiple leagues, some of the strategies that you should be looking to implement. Next week in Premier Madden, we're going to have, I actually took a step away from the league to handle some stuff outside of the league, but we're reaching week 16, week 17. The Niners are still undefeated, so very interested to see how they fare in the playoffs. You still got the Cowboys, the reigning Super Bowl champs, that are going to have a bone to pick with the San Francisco Niners. The Seahawks should be getting in on the wild card. The Niners are going to make an appearance after winning the NFC North. Wait, did I say Vikings? I don't know if I said Niners or Vikings. Vikings will be the NFC North champions. On the other side, obviously, I'm out. I don't know if my team is going to make it, but I'm not going to be in the playoffs, so I wouldn't expect the Chiefs to be competitive. It's just a little too hard of a league for somebody to just step in week 15, 16, and get the hang of that team, even though I just figured it out with that team. I just felt like real confident the last 3 weeks, but either way, you got SGO in there with the Ravens, probably the early favorite within the playoffs. I don't know if the Chargers is going to make it. He did beat me. I'm out of the league, so I don't care about why, but it wasn't cheese. It was just more of a late night game. I went up 21-0 and was just kind of like, all right, well, I'll hang out and clean up and do some. Next thing I know, it's like 19-21, but you know, he's played some good games, some good close games against people, but he's been smacked by some of the better folks. So I think if any indication of early in that game was how his game is getting played, I think with a more focused mindset, it probably would have been thrown away. So I don't expect the Chargers to be competitive, but I mean, best of luck. If he can figure it out, he has a very talented secondary with Derwin James, so maybe he can get there. I don't know how the Browns are faring, if the Browns are going to make it. So we'll do a little bit more of an in-depth look, maybe get some more coverage of some of the playoff games, maybe get some of the folks that are in the playoffs to come in and talk, maybe get the Niners on here as he's new to the league, been fairly quiet, but he's gone a hot 15-0. So should be interesting. Interesting more so on the NFC side. I think the AFC side is pretty much decided. But that Super Bowl is 100% up to grabs no matter who gets there. So no clear favorites in that regard. So that's it this week. If you have any questions, if you're in the league, drop them in the chat. I'll make sure to screenshot them and we'll talk about them next time on the podcast. And if you're just listening and you're excited, we do have some possible spots open for Madden 20. I don't know if he's going to bring back the Xbox League for Madden 20. So make sure you're at PremierMadden.com. Put in an application, read the rule book, put in a little application. It's real quick, doesn't take but 10 minutes to do, and reserve your spots in the Premier Madden League.